century. Humanity has accomplished more in the 21st century through technological advancement and scientific understanding than ever would have been imagined 100 years ago. Times are changing fast, as reliance on technology increases along with the ever-growing population. Everyday problems today are different than in the past, but many of the problems that we face today are solvable through the immense advancement in knowledge and experience that we have now. However, one of the problems that we still have not been able to solve is its climate change. Climate change is defined as a change in global or regional climate patterns, and it has recently shown a dramatic increase in extreme weather around the world. A tropical storm swirling over Colorado in September of 2013, a blistering record-breaking drought in California in 2015, and increases of precipitation in typically arid climates are only a few of the global weather changes that have happened within the last 5 years.
The climate has changed and fluctuated throughout the global timeline, but is the current change purely natural? Does humanity have any involvement? The answer to this widely asked question is yes. The use of fossil fuels to create energy emits greenhouse gases, primarily carbon dioxide. Although temperature and global climate have fluctuated throughout history, such as dramatic changes happening in such a short time period do not correlate with the past patterns.
Are currently dumping 6 billion tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere yearly, raising the carbon dioxide levels. According to Vostok Ice Core data, CO2 levels in pre-industrial times were 280 parts per million and have steadily risen to roughly 400 parts per million.
My name is Dr. Susan Bates. I'm an oceanographer and climate scientist at the National Center for Atmospheric Research in Boulder, Colorado, and I'm in the Climate Change Research section.
What potential changes could occur in ocean currents with an increase in temperature, and what effect would that have on global weather patterns?
So there's an ocean current that's being studied quite a bit right now and isn't quite fully understood yet. It's called the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, and this is a circulation that's part of a larger global circulation. There are a couple of places on the planet where deep water forms in the ocean. So the water gets dense enough and cold enough that it sinks all the way to the bottom of the ocean. One of the places that this happens is in the North Atlantic Ocean. And so that water sinks all the way to the bottom and then it flows southward in the Atlantic Ocean. That water has to be replaced by something as it leaves the surface of the ocean. So on the top of the ocean, you've actually got water coming northward in the tropics into the northern hemisphere. And what we've seen with this current is that it appears to be slowing down as the planet warms. And our global climate models are also showing that this will continue to slow down as the globe continues to warm. And so that would actually change the heat distribution on the entire globe, because it would be changing this distribution of heat between the tropics and the higher latitudes.
The greenhouse effect is what makes global temperature changes possible. Greenhouse gases act as a blanket over the atmosphere, and when there are more of them, solar energy is retained, causing an increase in temperature. This phenomenon is purely natural. However, climate patterns from history were based off of natural CO2 levels in the carbon sink system. However, when additional carbon dioxide is being added, the carbon cycle is thrown off balance and cannot absorb as much yearly. When less is absorbed, more accumulates and contributes to an enhanced greenhouse effect. Along with the decrease in stratospheric ozone and rising global temperatures, Arctic ice sheets are currently decreasing at a rate of 258 billion metric tons per year. Research done by the National Forest Service shows that the global forests absorb 33% of all carbon dioxide emissions. The tropical rainforests have been found to contain over 250 billion tons of carbon dioxide and are currently being deforested at a rate of 20,000 square miles each year. A quickly vanishing rainforest means depletion of major global carbon sinks. When CO2 is being released at a rate of 6 billion per tons a year and major carbon sinks are being depleted, less carbon dioxide can be absorbed yearly, which begins to accumulate in the atmosphere. Human-induced climate change is widely debated, and the argument of skeptics is legitimate. The argument behind scientists and skeptics who believe climate change is natural is primarily the fact that the original Vostok Ice Core data shows that temperature drives carbon dioxide levels by 800 years, opposed to the carbon dioxide levels driving temperature. The original data shows a 800-year gap between the temperature rising and the carbon dioxide rising. As proven as this phenomenon might be, carbon dioxide still has an effect on temperature without driving temperature. Temperature changes causes global carbon sinks to release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which can still have an effect on temperature due to the greenhouse effect. When solar photons enter the atmosphere, they are traveling in wavelength that allows a majority of them to enter the atmosphere. When these waves are radiated back into the atmosphere from Earth in the form of infrared energy, the wavelength changes to a frequency that is retained by the greenhouse gas layer in the atmosphere. The greenhouse effect, when in moderation, is what allows Earth to maintain a healthy temperature to sustain life. However, when unnatural amounts of CO2 are released through the burning of fossil fuels, more heat from the sun is retained in the atmosphere, which in turn causes dramatic changes in global temperature patterns.
How urgent is climate change, and what steps could be taken to slow or potentially stop climate change?
So I think climate change is fairly urgent. There are going to be places on the globe that are going to have food shortages or water shortages, which we're familiar with in this area. And this brings up a whole bunch of questions about national security. How are we going to feed the people that live in this country? Or there'll be fights or feuds over water, things like that. And so I think about curbing climate change. However, we are committed to a certain amount of warming already. And what I mean by that is we've already put a lot of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And for example, carbon will remain in the atmosphere for 100 years. So the amount of carbon that we've already put up there, it's going to remain there for many more decades and is going to continue to act as a greenhouse gas and continue to cause warming. And so that's what I mean by commitment, is we're already committed to a certain amount of warming just based on the amount of greenhouse gases that we've put in the atmosphere.
Although the Earth has experienced varying climates throughout history, the evidence is clear that human activity in the last century has accelerated global climate change, and is definitely not making the situation better. Not only do we need to respect global climate and let nature take its own course, but we also need to turn to renewable resources to clean up the air that 7 billion people breathe every day.